The Senate as Republicans unveil their plan to replace Obamacare.
It's significant reform. It's a move in a much better direction.
This bill has even more Medicaid cuts than the House bill.
These are not cuts to Medicaid, George. This slows the rate for the future and getting Medicaid back to where it was.
We are doing everything we can to fight this bill because it's so devastating for the middle class.
The Senate Judiciary Committee launching an investigation into whether former Attorney General Loretta Lynch interfered with the Hillary Clinton email probe.
The U.S. Supreme Court expected to announce several high-profile decisions, including one on President Trump's travel ban.
CNN imposing some strict new rules for its Russia coverage. The restrictions come after CNN had to retract a story connecting a prominent ally of President Trump to a Russian investment fund.
What grade do you give your dad?
I think he's doing an amazing job.
It's a really hard job.
And there are always naysayers, and it's much easier to criticize than it is to actually dive in.
You're getting bigger? Are we expanding it over the weekend? It's like we added a wing.
It is the biggest studio in the Fox News complex. Welcome aboard live from New York City and the White House. Can you see Peter Doocy out on the lawn somewhere?
He's down in this corner. He would
You're not allowed to walk on the
cut
lawn.
down the trees.
You walk on the lawn, 2 Secret Service agents tackle you.
Actually, Ainsley's walking on the lawn with Ivanka. I saw her in a promo clip for this morning's big exclusive interview.
That's right. We interviewed her, and we're going to air that this morning. We were in the Rose Garden with her, and we also sat down in one of the rooms inside the White House. Really cool.
All right. Meanwhile, Peter Doocy is actually on the north lawn of the White House, where this morning, Peter, how are the people inside the White House regarding whether or not health care gets done this week before the 4th of July?
It sounds like any kind of presidential pressure that's being put on lawmakers to get this done right now is being applied in a friendly way, at least for the last few days and at least for now, because President Trump says that since he moved here in January, he has become friends with a lot of Republican lawmakers. And since he only needs Republican lawmakers in the Senate to pass health care this week, he likes his chances of being able to flip enough of them to get it done.
I have great relationships with most of the people in the Senate, with, as you know, most of the people in the House. I think I work very hard. I made a lot of great friendships with the people in the House, a lot of them. Same thing in the Senate. They're 4 very good people. They're friends of mine. And I don't think they're that far off. I don't think they're that far off. You know, famous last words, right? But I think we're going to get there. Can't promise. I think we're going to get there.
We're also now hearing about just how aggressive President Trump's wheeling and dealing has been behind the scenes on health care from the Republican in charge of whipping votes in the Senate, Texas Senator John Cornyn, who said this weekend about President Trump's approach, quote, "We're trying to hold him back a little bit. He's going to be important in the process." And even though there are only 5 GOP senators opposed officially to this bill right now, President Trump is apparently making calls to anyone who could change their minds at the last second. The White House isn't giving us a list of who these people are, but we're hearing it from the senators themselves, including this weekend Senator Luther Strange from Alabama, who said he got a call, had a great conversation with the president, appreciates how involved he is, and he said that he thinks the president is working very hard to get to 51. Back to you.
All right. Thanks, Peter. You know, the big question, too, is this week is going to be the CBO. I mean, today we're going to find out what the CBO says. And that's when a lot of Republicans, how much it costs. And that's when a lot of Republicans run for cover, because the CBO is going to say, without a mandate, technically less people are going to be covered because you don't have to get insurance, because people like this thing called freedom of choice, which I think we fought for. So now all of a sudden that's going to make other people say, well, like Dean Heller, I think I'm going to maybe not go along with this unless he's pressured. Other people on the fence for different reasons than Paul Cruz, Mike Lee, and Ron Johnson is Murkowski, Collins, and Gardner. They want more Medicaid. The conservatives saying, why are you leaving Medicaid expansion? We can't afford it. Those are the ones that are already on the record saying, I can't vote for this. So for the exact opposite reasons, 2 camps are on separate sides.
And so why is Medicaid so difficult? Because half the Republican-run states went for the Medicaid expansion. They took the money. The other half did not. Now, here's
well,
what
8 overall.
Here's what you have to keep in mind. If you are currently getting Medicaid through the expansion program, through the Affordable Care Act. It will continue in the future going forward. At least that's what Kellyanne Conway was trying to convince George Stephanopoulos of yesterday when he was essentially interrogating her over potential cuts to that program.
This bill has even more Medicaid cuts than the House bill. Why is the president going back on his promise?
These are not cuts to Medicaid, George. This slows the rate for the future, and it allows governors more flexibility with Medicaid dollars because they're closest to the people in need.
So these senators are the ones saying these are Medicaid cuts. Is the president prepared to put more money back into Medicaid?
If you are currently in Medicaid, if you became a Medicaid recipient through the Obamacare expansion, you are grandfathered in. We're talking about in the future.
Kellyanne, hold on a second. There's no way you can say that a 15-year-old on Medicaid today is not going to be affected by the cuts in the future. It also
you
raises
keep calling them cuts, but we don't see them as cuts. It's slowing the rate of growth in the future and getting Medicaid back to where it was.
So Republicans would argue that they're doing the best that they can. They're trying to come up with a new plan because what's happening with Obamacare is not working and it's failing and people are paying too much and insurance companies are pulling out. So they have to do something. So whether or not the Republicans can come together, can agree on this, can some of those 5 that say they're not voting for it, can the president, will his calls to those individuals, to those senators, will it make a difference? Will he be able to say, all right, what are your issues, Rand Paul? What are your issues?
Rand Paul, I wouldn't start with him.
All right, he's going to be a no, definitely. But if he
no.
goes down the list, he says, what are the problems that you have with this? Let's try to fix that. Let's negotiate and compromise for the American people.
I wouldn't say that Rand Paul's definitely a no, and here's why. Because if you could talk to Rand Paul and let him know that there's still going to be reconciliation and there's still going to be things Tom Price, as Health and Human Services Secretary, can do down the line, continue to fix this. The problem that President Trump finds himself in is that Barack Obama wrote a check on overdraft that we can't afford to all these states to have money to provide state-run programs. And now that that money's out there, another president walks in and goes, we can't afford this. We're $21 trillion in debt, and nobody's happy with this current plan. So then everyone's all of a sudden they vilified Donald Trump for saying, wow, you look like you're taking money from the poor. He's like, we don't even have that money to give to begin with. It was on a credit card that we couldn't afford even to pay the fees for.
That's what Kellyanne was saying. She said we just need to slow down Medicaid. Right. We need to go back to what
Still
it was.
Still increasing it.
Right, sure. Right. She's saying it was for the elderly. It was for pregnant women. It was for sick children. She's saying we need to go back to that and make sure that we're not giving the money to people who don't need it.
Sure. And so Rand Paul and others, you know, the entire Republican caucus said, give us a chance. We're going to repeal and replace. Rand Paul's big problem is it does not do that. It's not
it's too much of Obamacare.
Yeah, there's too much left.
And you know why? Because you cannot, without 60 votes, you can't cleanly repeal anything and pass anything. You have to fine-tune what's there.
Right, it's a trick. So anyway, Chuck Schumer was on one of the Sunday morning shows yesterday, and he said, look, we're ready to help fix this program. We don't want to redo it. So anyway, going forward, will it happen by the end of the week? I was talking to a White House insider. He says, not looking too good right now.
A lot of people say slow down. Senator Ron Johnson and Senator Cassidy want everyone to slow down. We'll see if slowing down does anything.
Well, you have Senator Collins who's saying, I want to see the CBO report. But didn't the CBO report say that Obamacare was going to do well and be successful? Wasn't it wrong?
Absolutely. That's a great point. There's a lot of things that CBO said and promised that was going to happen with Obamacare were flat out erroneous.
And then when you look at, there are certain things in this particular Senate plan that senators are going to say no to. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska is a no when it comes to Planned Parenthood, as is Susan Collins.
Because they wanted to fund it.
They're going to have to take that out. So there's going to be a lot of pulling back and forth over the next couple of days to see if they can come to an agreement.
So there's a professor named Lisa Durden, and she was on to defend her position with Tucker Carlson the other day about having a party, a get-together that excluded white people. It was a Black Lives Matter party.
That's right. Well, she had these remarks to say on Tucker Carlson's show, and as a result, she got fired. We'll talk about that. But listen to what she said on Tucker's show.
Boo-hoo-hoo. You white people are angry because you couldn't use your white privilege card to get invited to the Black Lives Matters All Black Memorial Day celebration. Wow. Listen, white folks crack me up all of a sudden when we want to have one day for black folks to focus on ourselves. But you've been having White Day forever. We have Mother's Day. We have Father's Day.
Fathers
so
are
on
allowed
Mother's
to
Day,
participate
just take
in
your
that.
mama out,
I'm
not
not
your
sure you're
daddy
even
out.
capable of having this conversation, so I'm going to end it now.
He ended that. She was suspended with pay 2 days later. 3 days later, she got fired. The college president said he got calls from everybody. Couldn't believe she was on the staff.
It's the Essex County College,
right,
which is in New Jersey.
Her attorney believes her free speech rights have been violated. She is considering legal action. Meanwhile, after Otto Warmbier died, there is a professor at the University of Delaware by the name of Catherine Detweiler, and she, on her Facebook and also in the comments section of National Review Online, said this about Otto Warmbier.
This is unbelievable. She said Otto Warmbier got exactly what he deserved. He went to North Korea for blank's sake and then acted like a spoiled, naive, arrogant U.S. college student who had never had to face the consequences of his actions.
So we got 15 years hard labor, ends up in a coma, and then dies 2 days later once he comes home. She's an adjunct anthropology professor at Delaware, and I believe she was let go.
She's not going to be asked to return to teach. So both those professors, after saying some outrageous things, one in print, one on TV, out of their jobs.
What is wrong with them? Especially that the teacher. My goodness, the kid is dead.
Tell that to the University of Virginia. I talked to Professor Sabato, who knew him, and they said the whole college of the university is in a sense of mourning.
Which is where Otto went.
Yeah, and the University of Delaware has a professor making those comments. Unbelievable. So what are your thoughts about both these stories? Let us know. Friends at FoxNews.com, or you can tweet us.
All right, it is 6:11 now here in New York City, and Jillian joins us on this Monday morning for some headlines.
Tough to listen to comments like that, for sure. Good Monday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's begin with this. Is today the day Justice Anthony Kennedy calls it quits? The speculation is growing at this hour. The 80-year-old justice will announce his retirement on the court's last day before summer recess. Now, if he does throw in the towel, that would give President Trump a second Supreme Court pick. The High Court also expected to decide what action to take on President Trump's travel ban. And the justices could weigh in on a separation of church and state case that deals with a Missouri church playground excluded from a state grant program. This is really heartbreaking. 9 people are dead, dozens of others missing after a party boat packed with people suddenly sinks. Take a look at this video. The 4-story ship plunging underwater in just a matter of minutes in Colombia. The time-lapse video actually shows rescuers racing to the scene, pulling 100 people from the water. It's unclear what caused that boat to sink. Survivors say it appeared to be overloaded. The gondola ride where a teenager plunged 25 feet to the ground, that is closed today. The girl's neck appears to be stuck in the metal bar before she falls into the arms of bystanders. This happened inside Six Flags Great Escape in upstate New York. The entire thing was caught on camera. Take a look.
They'll catch you, honey. Go ahead.
Look at that scene. My goodness, the 14-year-old girl not seriously hurt. The park is now conducting an internal review, saying there doesn't appear to be a mechanical issue. The rest of the park, though, is still open. And when you guys saw that video, I heard you reacting, saying, whoa, it's hard to look at that video.
Yeah, I was also noticing, I'm so glad there were so many people that came to her rescue and caught her, but then there are people like behind them that are just standing there. I'm like, go over there.
Is this part of the ride?
I don't get on those rides that I say to myself, I wonder if I'm going to fall. Meanwhile, straight ahead.
Coming up, our exclusive sit-down interview with Ivanka Trump.
Do you give your dad? I think he's doing an amazing job. I think he's doing an unbelievable job.
So what's the grade?
Oh, good tease. Stick around.
We have a very good plan. We have a few people that are, I think you could say modestly, they're not standing on the rooftops and screaming. They want to get some points. I think they'll get some points. And hopefully we can get it done, because the problem we have, Pete, is that Obamacare is done.
Well, President Trump calling out a handful of Republican senators still on the fence about the GOP health care bill, but not aggressively, you notice. So who are these senators, and why are they jeopardizing this critical vote? Are they doing it for the right reasons? Joining us right now to weigh in is congressional reporter for Real Clear Politics, James Arkin. James, let's break down some of these complaints. First off, I was struck by the fact that Senator Dean Heller had a presser to complain about a plan he's not going to vote for. And his main complaint is he thinks cuts to Medicaid are bad for his state, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think a lot of people were surprised at just how much he was critical of the bill during that press conference, but he said that he thinks Medicaid has been very good for his state, and he's worried about the federal spending on Medicaid, the cutback in this bill. And so that puts him at the other end of the spectrum from these other senators who have said they're opposed right now.
Tough re-election campaign. That has a lot to do with it. You think he's a toss-up whether he gets the expansion needed? They already extended it for 3 years and giving these payments to states that we can't afford, right?
Yeah, they've already moved a little bit in the moderate direction in terms of comparing it to the House bill and what they do with Medicaid. So it's going to be difficult to move even further in that direction and secure his vote without frustrating the conservatives more.
Senator Rand Paul is going to need more than a round of golf with the president, he says, but he is open. His major complaint is everything. He considers his whole plan Obamacare light. He wants to totally repeal and replace. But you're not going to get that without 60 votes. Is there a midway point for him?
I think Republican leadership considers Rand Paul as probably the toughest vote to get. He has consistently said this bill does not repeal Obamacare, and that's what he wants to vote for, is something that repeals Obamacare. I think it's really difficult to imagine a scenario where they can add enough to the bill at this point to secure his vote. He's probably the likeliest no vote right now.
Ted Cruz, interesting, just as conservative. However, he wants to get to a yes. His main complaint is insurers are still compliant with ACA regulations. He wants an amendment offering more flexible plans. So far, we don't have any of that flexibility, and we can't go across state lines to buy plans in the individual market.
Yeah, that's Ted Cruz's main complaint, is that Obamacare has caused premiums to rise, and he believes it's because of these regulations. So if he can get some changes to the bill to allow insurers to offer plans that opt out of these regulations, I think he's probably going to be able to support it.
And I think Lee wants to play ball, too, but he has got a plan. He's big conservative. Remaining ACA regulations drive up costs. Of course, the costs are out of control. There's no sign that Medicare pharmaceuticals are going to come under be reined in at all either, right?
Right, that's correct. And yeah, Mike Lee's in a very similar position as Ted Cruz. He cares about the regulations. He cares about how they've driven up the cost of premiums. And so if they can get some flexibility there, I think Mike Lee can probably get to yes on the legislation. But those are going to be some tough things to add. Right.
And of course, Planned Parenthood would bring in Murkowski. If you could, don't repeal that. If you put that on the outside of bringing Murkowski and Collins, perhaps. Hey, James Arkin, thanks so much. When we come back, we're going to talk to, actually, Ainsley talks down to Ivanka Trump. Don't miss a minute.
Monday morning, we got some quick headlines for you. Pro-ISIS propaganda taking over U.S. government website. Hackers breaking into several servers in the states of Ohio, New York, and Maryland, posting, quote, "You will be held accountable, Trump, you and all your people, for every drop of blood flowing in Muslim countries. I love Islamic State." Ohio Governor John Kasich's website among those hacked. And an American tourist back in the United States in serious condition after being shot and robbed in Turks and Caicos. Kevin Newman on vacation with his family when he was attacked near his resort. He is now recovering at a Florida hospital where he has undergone several surgeries. All right, it's 6:25 now here in New York City.
Well, on Friday, last Friday, we went to the White House. We got to interview the president and the First Lady, Melania. You saw that interview. We aired that. We also got to sit down with President Trump's daughter, Ivanka, talking about her role in the White House, being the advisor to her dad, talking about what it's like to live in D.C., her children, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, so here's a little clip of what we sat down and talked about.
You are an advisor to the President of the United States. What do you advise your father on? I advise my father on a plethora of things. So, you know, he trusts me to be very candid with my opinions. I don't have a hidden agenda. I make it very clear where I stand on a certain issue. So I give him my open and candid feedback. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree. What do you disagree on? You know, we're different people, so there are areas we disagree, and what do you think? And he respects. Yes, this was a very interesting thing. Why I disagree with my father, or why I disagree with my dad in Us Weekly. So I never actually spoke to them, and I didn't know about the article being written until after it was published. But it's written in the first person, which is a slightly misleading headline. Interesting. But no, I think it's normal. To not have 100% aligned viewpoints on every issue. I think that would be a very strange scenario, and I don't think anyone operates like that with a parent or within the context of an administration. And I think that all different viewpoints being at the table is a positive thing. And I think one of the things that in this country we don't have enough of is dialogue and substantive dialogue, where people who have different opinions can speak about
Your
them
father's been great about
freely
that.
and candidly.
He's met with CEOs of tech companies just recently. He encouraged, and many of them didn't vote for him, but he still wanted to hear their opinions. But the left still says that he's not doing a good job. Or what are your thoughts about that?
There's an extreme emphasis on what you're against. And there's so many areas where there's total alignment, and I'm more interested in being for something than against something. So naturally, there are areas where there's disagreement. We're two different human beings. So I instead like to focus on areas where I can add positive value, where I can contribute to the agenda, policies around workforce development, about ensuring that barriers are removed for the American working family, policies that enable that family to thrive, focusing on how we can help our veterans and how we can really deliver them the care that they so need, focusing on issues relating to the really devastating opioid problem that we have in this country.
What do you advise him in regards to his tweeting?
You know, I try to stay out of politics. You know, his political instincts are phenomenal. He did something that no one could have imagined he'd be able to accomplish. There were very few who saw it early on. I feel blessed to have been part of the ride from day one and before, but and really lean into the issues that I care deeply about.
What grade do you give your dad?
I think he's doing an amazing job. I think he's doing an unbelievable job. You know, when you think about the security of this country, when you think about the policies being put in place to support the American worker, when you see what's happening in the stock market, it's thriving. Small business owners across this country feel a renewed sense of optimism and vigor and spirit. So it's a really hard job, and there are always naysayers, and it's much easier to criticize than it is to actually dive in and do and affect change and move the ball forward.
That's great. So what's the grade?
Oh, an A.
An A.
Of course. I'm slightly biased, but definitely an A.
Oh, there you go. See, now I was at the grocery store. I saw that Us Weekly headline. I thought, oh, she's talked to them. No, she didn't.
No, they didn't ever ask her opinions.
Now you know.
Right. So a little bit later, we're going to be hearing about
Her children.
Okay.
Coming up, what they think of Air Force One. It's a really cute story.
They've got a nickname for it.
They do. They do. Don't give it away yet.
They call it a Cessna compared to what they had.
Right.
Terrific. All right. Good interview. Coming up on this Monday, she's a traitor who leaked classified government secrets and put lives at risk. Yet, Chelsea Manning emerged yesterday to cheers. Should we just forget the past and honor her bravery today, some wonder?
And you know him from the
iconic movie A Full Metal Jacket.
Let me see your war face. Sir, you got a war face? Ah! That's a war face. Now let me see your war face. Ah!
Matthew Modine
will be screaming with us. He's doing something to help our heroes, and he's here to tell us about it. Also, give us photos we've never seen before.
Give us that news face. It's not a bus, that's an airplane. I would have gotten off right about here, and it is your shot of the morning. A pilot at this point asked passengers to pray after this plane started shaking. They described it like a washing machine, and they were 30,000 feet in the air.
Yup, seats and tray tables that you saw vibrating uncontrollably for nearly 2 hours.
2 hours?
The Air Asia flight, that was Ainsley chiming in on my read. From Australia to Malaysia, forced to turn around. I'm going to do it to her, too, later. With more than 360 people on board. Go ahead, Ainsley.
Well, Brian, once the plane landed safely...
Safely?
A passenger telling Fox News...
Fox News?
The pilot shook every single person's hand on board...
Hand?
Thanking them for their prayers.
Period.
Air Asia blaming it on a technical failure with the engine. Brian.
Oh my goodness!
Any last remarks?
No, I don't think. I think we're even.
Serious stuff. I mean, it's amazing that it all worked out.
Well, everyone's so calm in the video. I'm sure in the beginning they were screaming, "Oh my gosh, the pilot's asking us to pray!" But it went on for 2 hours, so I'm sure that was taken like at the tail end
I
of the
kept
truck.
expecting like Leslie Nielsen to pop out or something like that.
I was actually on a flight once out of JFK going somewhere during a snowstorm, and people were screaming, and this lady, like, I think in the seat in front of me, she was praying, and she had a Bible out and accidentally hit me in the head with the Bible.
Really?
We were fine.
Trying to save you.
Did it feel like the New Testament or Old Testament? You don't know.
Great question. I think it was a new.
Okay, good.
Just saying.
All right,
Glad it all
Jillian?
worked out.
Thank goodness you're here to tell the story. That is what matters.
That's true.
Good morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's start right now with this. An inmate on the run for 32 years is back behind bars. 60-year-old Stephen Dishman arrested in Arkansas after escaping prison in 1985. He was serving a 7-year sentence for burglary and theft. Now, it's unclear how police eventually tracked him down, but Dishman will now serve the remainder of his sentence. At the time of his escape, Dishman was just 2 years away from being eligible for parole. The convicted traitor who put lives at risk by handing over top secret documents to WikiLeaks, cheering her heart out at the Pride Parade in New York City. Chelsea Manning, formerly known as Bradley, tweeting she was honored to represent the American Civil Liberties Union. The transgender soldier just released early from prison, serving only 7 years of her 35-year sentence, thanks to former President Obama's pardon. And how about this story? Talk about incredible, right? The Hulk himself, Lou Ferrigno, helped save a life at Comic-Con. Take a look. You know that guy, right? This fan having a seizure, though, when meeting Ferrigno in Tennessee. The actor grabbed hold of him before he could collapse, clearing the booth and calling for paramedics. Once rescuers cleared the fan, Ferrigno invited him back to the booth to take that picture. So it ended well. So we will take that on this Monday. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Jillian,
Thanks,
thank you very much. All right, let's get in the time machine. It was 30 years ago today that this man, one of the stars of Full Metal Jacket, Matthew Modine, graced silver screens all around the world. And he joins us today to tell us how he's helping veterans with something you actually did 30 years ago during the making of the movie.
Yeah, so Stanley Kubrick allowed me to do something which was quite extraordinary, which was to take photographs on his set. I had a medium format Rolleiflex camera that somebody gave to me and said, Stanley would be so impressed if you knew how to use this camera. and I started taking photographs, and he liked them.
Because you were a journalist in the movie.
I was playing a journalist. I was keeping a diary and taking photographs, and these photographs sat in a box for so many years, and then we published it into a book which was called the Full Metal Jacket Diary, and then we made it into an iPad app. And now, working with this company called Paddle 8, it's an online auction house, we're going to be selling the photographs to benefit the Purple Heart Foundation.
That's wonderful. Why is this important to you?
Well, I mean, for many reasons. I've done a lot of work with the Wounded Warrior Project, and my uncle was a Purple Heart recipient. He flew B-17 in the Second World War. Wow. He flew 17 missions before he got shot down. Almost had his right arm taken off. He crash landed the plane with one arm in a field in France. Wow. And, when I wore his dress uniform in the movie, and I was playing essentially what my uncle did. And he said, one thing they always get wrong with these movies is everybody's too damn old. He said he was 20 years old when he was the pilot of the plane.
20.
His crew was 17, 18 years old. Wow. And I was about, I think, 30 when I did the film. But I wore his dress uniform, and he said, when you put that uniform on, don't disrespect it. And it changes your life. Recently in Los Angeles, last week, I was at an event for veterans, and I said the Pledge of Allegiance for the first time with a group of people like that, and it brought tears to my eyes, because the Pledge of Allegiance, when you hear it coming from people who've served this nation, it takes on a whole different kind of significance.
But there's something, too, about the Vietnam War. We really have respect, I think, 95% of the people I talk to, for the people that serve now, World War II, World War I, Korea. But something about Vietnam doesn't, I don't feel as though those guys have been respected.
No, they haven't. No, and my brother served. My brother was in the Navy. Actually, my brother Russell, my brother Michael, my sister Elizabeth, and my oldest brother Mark. Mark was the only one that went to Vietnam. But Yeah, it's kind of a forgotten part of our history.
But not for you.
No, I've done 3 films about Vietnam. Streamers that Robert Altman directed, Birdie, which was before we knew those words, post-traumatic stress, that Birdie suffering with Nicolas Cage, directed by Alan Parker, and of course Full Metal Jacket. And it's a confusing war.